So,
Yeah, I have a little less than 2 minutes.
okay. So Denise, did you say last week that you guys are doing Thanksgiving in a barn?
I'm sorry, Victoria.
Mm-hmm. It's just, I heard you say that your family, you guys are going to do Thanksgiving in a barn.
No, we're going to do Thanksgiving via Zoom. We had a family meeting last night via Zoom.
It's a, yeah.
My mom put the kibosh on all of it and said, we're going to do it Zoom. I said, oh, okay.
So commissioners, we are live. We're just waiting for 1 o'clock to start and we can start our meeting.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a staff meeting of the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners. It's November 17th, 2020. We have a pretty lengthy agenda actually today. So we are going to start off with a standing item. Up until we pass the budget, we're going to have a standing item on all the staff agendas related to the budget in case there's any question or conversation anybody wants to have related to the budget. On that note, my staff has sent out 2 dates for the public hearings, commissioners, to your offices. One, December 3rd at 1:30, so that would be during one of our regular meetings. And then the second one is December 10th at 6, so that would be the evening meeting. So please take a look at that and let me know if those dates and times work for you. And once I've heard from both of you, we will get those on the calendar. And with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the budget.
Thank you, Madam President, and I will not take long. Obviously, we've got budget hearings coming up and we can do a more formal presentation at those hearings. I am going to share my screen briefly to just walk through something for a few seconds before I turn it back to the board. Let's see here. Okay, are you able?
Yep.
Okay, so just for those who may be watching at home, a couple of things about the 2021 general fund budget. First of all, do you want to say the budget is online at www.hamiltoncountyohio.gov. So for those who would like to read the budget, the recommended budget in its entirety, it is online for your review. This is the general fund budget. So this is the primary operating fund of the county. It supports many of our mandated and policy-driven functions, everything from 911 to operating the jail, veterans benefits, the crime lab. This is the primary fund for managing elections and our community planning and zoning work. All our system of public safety, whether it's the sheriff's office or our criminal justice work through the court systems, prosecutor, public defender, et cetera. Most of those core services of the county are funded through the budget, through the general fund budget. As it relates to the all funds budget, this does not include things like the Banks Project, does not include MSD, does not include JFS, does not include our county voted property tax levies. That's our all funds budget. This is the general fund budget, which is separate from those. Our 5-year pro forma shows that our budget at $290.7 million is balanced structurally for the 5-year forecast, as you can see. The budget also contains, in addition to funding our mandated services, many of the policy initiatives that the board includes in its policy agenda, everything from public safety initiatives to our efforts as it relates to equity and inclusion, to our community revitalization work and our economic development work. So again, I don't plan on going into a whole lot of depth today because we did that a week ago when we released the budget. We also have 2 budget hearings coming up, but just wanted to set the context at a very high level for the board as the board uses this time to talk about the budget in general, or anything that you would, any information or questions you would have that we can get back to you on prior to the first of the hearings. So with that, Madam President, I will turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any comments or questions related to the budget before we move on? Knowing, you know, we have these public hearings coming up. And Jeff, I expect that at those hearings, you will do more of a full-blown explanation of the budget, including a PowerPoint.
We will go through a full in-depth presentation on the budget at each of those hearings.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, as stated before, this is a standing item. Commissioners, anything to add?
I have nothing at this time. I was just wondering, Jeff, what is the last date that you want input from us? I was looking at the public safety component of that, and I noticed about the opioid addiction part, and I was thinking about the violence in our county and whether or not we had specifically addressed how we were going to deal with gun violence under the public safety area.
Got it. So there is a specific portion of the budget that provides matching funds to a sheriff's grant related to Lincoln Heights as a programming for reducing gun violence. That's the specific gun violence reduction program that's in the recommended budget as of this point, but certainly open to comments in that regard. So in terms of the last time for comment, I don't know that there really is a last time up until the board passes the budget, which we recommended on the 17th of December. But certainly this staff meeting and the next staff meeting would be, if we wanted to have comments before the first budget hearing, this next week would be a really good time to receive anything from the board on any programmatic initiatives.
Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, Lincoln Heights, that's a great program that we're going to start out. And I'm just, we can talk at another time if we as a board need to look at the increased violence in the county and whether or not we want to partner or anything with the city. That's just off the top of my head. We had not discussed it, but if there's something we might want to do to partner with them. That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. Commissioner Parks?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. You know, I'm going to take this opportunity to acknowledge Todd Perdue and the details in this balanced budget of so many initiatives that he started. I'm proud that we are wrapping up many of them and that we're balanced, which is something that he would really be proud of. So just an example or two of what Todd was so passionate about. The fact that we are lowering the 911 detail rate. Remember, he gave many speeches and soliloquies about that.
Indeed.
Yeah, he did. We're expanding the Office of Equity and Inclusion. We are adding to that. Wait a minute. So what is it, Jeff? Equity and inclusion. It was.
It's economic development and equity.
Yeah. So have we decided on it? Is that what we decided on?
That's what the resolution said that we passed related to racism.
Okay. So and Todd would really be proud of that, and I know it. You know, in our efforts involved in that, the Office of Family Voice, which is one of the last things that he wanted to get done before he left us. We've got the community revitalization, where we are adding a position to the Office of Economic Development and Equity. He would love that. We've got the economic disparity study. I'm also going to give him credit for that. He would love that. And just so many things that he was so passionate about. And I'm bringing these things up because I am coming to the end of his term. I'm really sentimental about it, but I'm also very proud of the work that we have done because I sincerely feel like we have fulfilled his wishes. And I want to express my appreciation to my fellow commissioners and administration and everybody else. So I'm sentimental about this, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I'm proud of it too. This energizes me. So thank you.
Yeah, you know, this budget, as all budgets, builds on the previous work that's been done, but then adds to it. And thankfully in this budget, because of our revenue situation, we have the ability to not only build but expand on what we've done in the past and then add some new things. And so this is, as I've said last week, the most positive I've ever felt about a county budget. So it's an interesting place to be in where we get to make some forward progress here, building upon what we've done in the past, but also adding some new. So thank you.
And Madam President, the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic,
yep.
and this is the most positive budget, and it's because of the disciplined budgets that went before this one.
Yeah, I agree. And the good work of the budget office to keep us, you know, in good stead with good reserves, with a balanced budget and with investments in our employees and all the rest of it. So,
oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah, let me ask a question. So in the past, I think last year, we did have a deadline for the commission offices to offer suggestions or changes or additions, ideas related to the budget. So we, Commissioner Summer Dumas, can put something like that in place. I do want to acknowledge that the public hearings would be on, if you all are available, the 3rd and the 10th. So it might make sense to have that deadline maybe in between those two dates so that we can hear from the public about what's on their mind and what they see, respond to that, and then provide some guidance to the administration. So I'm wondering, because we've got a couple of staff meetings coming up, and one does fall in that time period, it would be December 8th, where we'd have a staff meeting. We'd then have one more public hearing on the 10th, and then presumably or hopefully pass the budget the following week. So I want to just ask broadly if that would be a good deadline for everyone perhaps, and ask Jeff if that doesn't put you guys in too much of a bind timing wise to react to not only what we're recommending, but also the public hearings.
Administratively, the sooner the better, obviously, in terms of loading things into the budget, but that timeline itself doesn't sound problematic to me.
Okay.
Madam President, that's fine with me. I don't have any major input. The idea I just brought up possibly, but other than that, nothing major as it relates to the timeline.
Well, why don't we say then, if there are suggestions, if you want to just bring them to Jeff, the administrator, that's great. Just let's internally set our own deadline around the 8th. And if there's anything in writing or anything formal that needs to come in front of us, that can happen at that staff meeting, just so that we have a goal for, that kind of input so that the administration can then react to that.
And I'd like to make one additional comment as it relates to the budget. When I was running for office and came in 19, I remember people were asking me, why do you want to be a part of that? It's $29.1 million in the hole. And I said, that's why I want to be a part of it. So I think that we all need to, for those who are listening, the community who doesn't know, the showmanship and the great work that the budget department did and we did as it relates to not only a $29.1 million budget deficit being resolved, but if we had not went on and continued the sales tax, as I said before, for those who did not hear before, that we would have been in a $40 million deficit. So just very proud of not only the budget that we're projecting for this time, but it's even more than the budget that we had projected last time in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you for your input there.
Mhm.
Let's move on to our second item. It's a presentation by Nick Crosley, updating the emergency operations plan. Hi, Nick.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners, Administrator Oludo, and various attendees. Everybody can hear me okay?
Mhm.
Want to double check? So the Hamilton County Emergency Operations Plan is required by the ORC 5502.26. We are on a 5-year review and update plan. We actually look at it annually, and then we do an in-depth update as needed every 5 years. So we last did this actually in early 2016, late 2015. And then during the last year and a half, we've been working to this complete update you have before you today. And this has been on our website. We put it out for public comment prior to this meeting. The scope of this plan is that it addresses preparedness, response, and short-term recovery activities for events, both pre-planned and unplanned, that exceed normal emergency response capabilities. So an example is currently, as you know, we've been in a declared emergency since March of this year, and this plan has been active since March of this year. The different functions, and I'll talk about those functions here in a second to give you some context. If events are so complex, they require coordination of multiple jurisdictions. So that's the county. We have 49 communities, obviously working with the state and federal government, as well as the nonprofit and private sector, and are expected to last for an extended period. And last but not least, the plan is scalable and flexible depending on the needs of the event. So if you have a catastrophic disaster, we could theoretically activate all parts of the plan in all sections. We have 15 support functions, which encompasses dozens of agencies, departments, and organizations. But oftentimes we do not have to activate every single piece of the plan. We activate pieces of it, and the pandemic will give you a good example of that. In our planning process, we've sort of double checked. I think if you're from this area or if you've been here for a little while, you pretty much know what the big hazards are. So obviously flooding and flash flooding. Our flash flooding is one of our biggest concerns. We had the last huge one in 2016. It was a pretty devastating flood. Hazardous material incidences. So I think the Brent Spence Bridge is a prime example why we consider hazmat such a dangerous issue. Severe winter storms, thanks to all of our hills. And then landslides, we've had problems with those, high winds and tornadoes. We just had high winds, what's today, Tuesday, Sunday? Saturday night into Sunday, there were pretty drastic winds, about 25,000 people without, or customers without power just in Hamilton County. Fire, flood, riverine flooding, obviously is always a constant threat during several months of the year. Severe thunderstorms. Cyber attack, which we will be doing a lot more work with in the future. And then of course, structural failures. So this data was collected both from, we surveyed all of our partners in the community, we needed sort of that institutional knowledge that people that have been here, lived here, have been through things in the county for many, many years, as well as from data. So we looked at, especially with our last hazard mitigation plan update, the company that we hired did a lot of deep dive into the data about what has impacted Hamilton County and sort of what the scientific data said were a high risk. So we combined these two, ranked them, and these are, they actually come out to 8, but several ties. So these are our top 10 hazards, although we deal with all hazards and all of them are listed in our full plan. I didn't want to go too much in depth into those. So again, the emergency operation plan establishes a framework to ensure the county will be adequately prepared to respond to all hazards. So I say a framework, it's called a plan, but it's really a framework that basically ensures that regardless of the hazard, that we can do different functions, or at least to the best of our ability, accomplish certain functions before, during, and after a disaster. It outlines roles and responsibilities for all participating departments. So we engage with both with departments under the board, independent department and agencies, as well as independent electeds, and then of course the public and private sector. And then we coordinate with our federal and state, all 49 communities. So our planning structure is a nationally recognized model and nationally used model that models what the state of Ohio does, the National Response Framework under FEMA. And then we, as you may or may not know, we have created a a template for all of our communities that we then consult with them and help them develop emergency operations plans that dovetail ours, that should make it easier for the county to be able to assist local communities if we're all on the same page. And then, of course, we engage the private sector and non-governmental organizations like Red Cross, Salvation Army, various religious organizations. And that's just a plethora of nonprofits that we engage with, human services chamber, so on and so forth. So just the whole range of people that we interact with in the planning process and in the response and recovery. So basically, and interrupt me anytime if you have any questions. There's two parts to the plan. The basic plan, which is the first part of the document, outlines in general terms how the county will respond to and recover from a disaster. It addresses the different hazards the county is at risk from or vulnerable to, the responsibilities of various government agencies. So in my world, emergency management is the coordinator and the facilitator. Obviously, we do not control or have all the resources it takes to respond to a disaster. So rather than trying to develop all this capability under one agency, we simply take the power of government and all of our public and private sector partners, and we put them on steroids during a disaster. And we just ask for people. The reason that we go so wide and so broad with our support is that, as I always say, the business of government must continue during a disaster. So we have to be able to respond to the disaster, and we have to be able to continue the business of government. So we have our method of operations, who's in charge when, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Financial management policies that will be adhered to. So as you know, even though it's an emergency, we must be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. And so we have contracts we work with that the county already has. We can work through state contracts. We can do contracts quickly, as you know, during the pandemic. We've used that system quite a bit. And then, of course, as you know, you recently promulgated the new continuity of government plan to make sure that our elected representatives and our elected offices can continue to operate in a disaster if anything impacts them. So all of this sort of dovetails. It also dovetails with continuity of operations planning that we've been doing with different county agencies and departments. The second part of the plan are the emergency support functions. So these are the annexes to the basic plan, assign certain county agencies with a coordinated role in the 15 emergency support functions. So this is a county plan. So with each ESF, for the most part, except ESF 4, which is fire, a county department or agency is coordinates. So I won't say is responsible for, they coordinate all the people and the agencies that make those functions possible. ESF 4, we work with the Hamilton County Fire Chiefs because we don't own a fire department, if you will. But the fire chiefs are great to work with in this structure. The ESF structure is patterned after the federal system as outlined in the National Response Framework and contains at a minimum the responsibilities of the coordinating and support organizations that will respond. So if you're ever curious, you can just see the dozens and dozens of organizations that are involved if we need them in a major disaster response. And then they also contain certain support annexes that are standalone to the primary functions. So I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, we have 15 support functions in the plan. Thankfully, nothing physically has been destroyed, so we don't necessarily need to engage ESF 3 or ESF. I get them all mixed up. 12, working with the engineer's office. But we've engaged ESF 6, working with Job and Family Services. We've engaged ESF 15, which is public information. As you know, we've been doing a lot in that realm, educating the public, trying to help the public through the pandemic. ESF 8, working with the public health departments on health and medical. ESF 5, which is emergency management. So those are just some examples, but we have not necessarily engaged the entire structure because then people would just be sitting around. And we've operated this entire time virtually. So it's really not, during a global pandemic, most of us, while we work together, are not in each other's circles. So we operate in the virtual environment, email, telephone, virtual teleconference. And then at certain times, I know that I've come over and talked to the commissioners at times, or Administrator Ludo, whoever. But for the most part, we've managed this entire event really due to our pre-established relationships we've had before I got here, and they'll be here after I got here, after I leave in 15 years when I retire. No, I'm kidding. So this is sort of how it's all put together. These are the functions themselves. So these are our primary partners. So the engineer's office, engineer Eric Beck, and before him, Ted Hubbard are phenomenal to work with. Pick up the phone, call them, and they will help you with anything. Hamilton County Communication Center, Environmental Services, Fire Chiefs Association, Job and Family Services, Hamilton County Public Health and the Health Collaborative help us with health and medical. USAR, Hamilton County Urban Search and Rescue, which my agency helps support. The Local Emergency Planning Committee handles ESF-10, which are hazardous materials. So to give you an example, with the Brent Spence incident, I got called at 3:30 in the morning to let me know about that. I then coordinate with our LEPC lead, who's our ESF-10, sort of figure out what is the risk and what was the hazard to Hamilton County. After consulting with the National Weather Service, we determined the wind was blowing toward Kentucky. So we were okay at that moment. But that way we can analyze, we have a system in place, we can analyze chemicals quickly. We can figure out which way the wind blowing, what the hazard from the chemical is, as long as we know the name of it. And then we can implement safety measures if we need to. And we spent years developing those procedures. We work with, I'll bring this up in a minute, the Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District for animals and agriculture. So obviously you can see the agricultural link. The animals, we do work with CARES on that, although they are fairly new, but they are the group that would help us shelter household pets in a disaster. And again, the sheriff's office, and then of course our agency coordinates a few of these working with other people. So for example, on ESF-15, we work a lot with Bridget Doherty and the administrator's office out of your office on communication issues. And then of course with the many other communication people in the county. So this just shows you the breadth. And then under each of these coordinating agencies, our departments is just dozens of support organizations to be able to perform these functions. And these are nationally, some people may have a few extra after 15, but nationally everybody has these 15 in usually that shape. And then of course, sometimes we have hazards that are so complex that we have support annexes. And so one of those is we separate out hazardous materials annex. So again, hazardous materials are a serious issue in Hamilton County, both based on what we know about the storage of hazardous materials in the county, around the county, as well as the transportation of those chemicals. And the state does require a separate hazardous materials plan that's at the county level. We maintain that. And then we folded it into the EOP because while you have the subject matter expertise in the function itself, the entire system helps support that function if it has to activate. So it's not just a standalone plan. Future annexes we're looking at developing are any unique, we're going to talk about flooding. Sometimes there's some unique things with flooding that need to be enhanced. For example, both sheltering and mass care, as well as damage assessment, and then cyber. So I think you'll see over the next couple of years, you'll see us start to focus more and more on cyber issues, both internal to the county and external to our communities, to ensure that we are protected from cyber issues. Major updates from 2016. The engineer's office, again, working with Ted Hubbard previously and Eric Beck today, the elected engineers. You hand them a job, they just do it. So initially we had them running 3 of our emergency support functions. We took them down to 2, just sort of alleviate some of that load. And we gave ESF-3 to a different agency, environmental. And then environmental services, like I said, went to ESF-3 and helps us coordinate that function from hazardous materials. And we gave hazardous materials to our LEPC, which is technically my agency. It's housed in there, but they are a separate function in there. So this is just some little detail I wanted to point out. And then of course, we were working with the previous Dog Warden Humane Society. We switched it to soil and conservation when you were making changes at the county level. But when we move forward, we will work with Cincinnati Cares, sort of equal with the current soil and water conservation, because we need to deal with agriculture in a disaster as well as household pets. So just for your awareness, the Post-Katrina Act of 2005 requires counties to be able to take care of household pets. So that's why we put a lot of effort into that function and making sure we can perform that function. But again, not by trying to put everything under our agency, we simply reach out to our already county partners who already do those functions. So that's a prime example of that. Keep going forward. That's covered in the Emergency Operations Plan, the role of the county and the Emergency Operations Center. So we provide support and overall guidance for local jurisdictions in local or multi-jurisdictional disaster response and recovery. So what that means is we do a lot of pre-training on the issues, from damage assessment to how to engage the public information, to planning, helping communities develop their emergency operations plans, just the whole gamut of support we give pre-disaster. During a disaster, we do a lot of information coordination. We work with any of our communities that need extra help. So for example, if people needed damage assessment help, we have worked with Hamilton County Planning and Development to help provide extra damage assessment staff. We make sure that they know they have what they need to be able to do a damage assessment during a response. And then as we recover, we connect them with the state and federal resources if and when they become available. And then of course, with the recovery, working with them on their recovery as well. So it's sort of the whole gamut. That's sort of the county's role. As you know, I think 99% of the county is incorporated into some community. And so my goal since I got here in 2015 is to not only ensure that the county was ready to perform its role, but to provide enough of a structure to help our communities be as strong as possible as well. So even down to the smallest community, they have an elected board and they have people that run that community. We want them, if nothing else, to know who to call and how to ask for help. But our goal is to make them as strong as possible using the systems that they have. That's been one of my goals since I got here. The EOC, you've all been there. If needed, we can activate that both in person, or we also have an alternate site in another location for in-person activation, and we can also activate virtually, working with our partners. I always say, as long as you'll answer the phone, I can respond to a disaster. So we spend a lot of time getting people's cell phone numbers and making sure we can reach them. And then, of course, we work with local officials on long-term recovery needs. So that's connecting them with FEMA resources, HUD resources, Small Business Administration. The state has a disaster fund. We're one of the few states in the United States that has, if a disaster reaches the FEMA threshold in a county, but the state doesn't reach the FEMA threshold, so we don't get the state level or the federal level, then the governor can declare and ask the control board to open the state's disaster relief fund, and funding can become available to local counties. And we're very lucky in Ohio to have that system that the state supports. This is our structure. This is very busy, excuse me, but this gives you an idea of how complicated it can get if you had the full thing going. And again, I do a lot of this. We talk about finance. We've worked really closely with the budget office during the pandemic. We've worked really closely with purchasing on logistics issues. Director Kramer. We've worked really closely with our communications agency. So you can just see how complicated this can get if it was fully activated and the kind of things you have to track during a major disaster. So I'm going to take a moment to knock on wood.
Me too.
So this gives you this idea, and this is something we've been fleshing out. Ryan McCune, you can see him always on the bottom right on my assistant director, has done a phenomenal job on developing a lot of the structure along with Morgan Peterson. You've met her and my other staff. So what is your role? So as you know, your role is you're charged with providing overall policy guidance to staff during a disaster response to recovery. You're also, as the elected officials for our county, you are the voice of the county. So oftentimes my job is to make sure you have the information you need and the support that you need so that you can communicate that to the residents of Hamilton County. You are their elected representatives. And so that's why oftentimes during a disaster, I tend to inundate you with information so that you have what you need. But that's also why I say, call me anytime that you need anything. Because you are the voice and you are the group that sets policy for us and tells us what to do, or supports us as we talk to you about what we need to do. And then finally, support the county administrator and the staff in their duties to coordinate and facilitate the development. And I've used this phrase for years, and it's been around for a long time. Our goal, and it's in our mission statement, is to develop a disaster-resistant and a resilient county for the residents of Hamilton County. So as we move forward, focusing on flood prevention, flood mitigation, making sure our electrical system is robust, making sure that working with Duke that our gas supply is robust, that we continue to focus on cyber. There's any number of hazards that we will be mitigating. Landslides. Every day I drive through Cincinnati by down Columbia Parkway during one of the most impactful landslides we've had for years. They're doing a lot of work on that. So those are the kind of projects we move forward and we try to mitigate through planning, but we try to get funding. So what we'll do is we'll bring the promulgation to you on Thursday for the plan itself. This is the 5-year update. Again, we look at this annually. We make any sort of small changes that we can make. And then if there's any policy changes or for a full update, we come back every 5 years moving forward. So that's really what it is. And again, I sent it to you. And plus we put it out for public comment earlier and it'll be on our website.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. Hey, while we have you, could you please provide an update related to the vaccine and the work that you're doing to make sure that we're ready for that?
Oh, sure. So we work closely with all of our health districts, primarily Hamilton County Public Health. We're in the process of, we will be installing cold storage, both walk-in freezers, walk-in cooler, and an ultra cold freezer. So that should the vaccine, any level of the vaccine, whether it be the ultra cold Pfizer, the Pfizer vaccine that needs ultra cold storage, or the -20, I keep wanting to call the Madeira vaccine comes out, that we have enough storage capacity to store any vaccine sent to public authorities. So public health, EMS, anything like that, we're here to support countywide. We have a secure location for that, and we'll be engaging with our public health and first responder communities on how that will be received and how they will distribute it from our secure location.
Great, thank you. Just want to make sure everybody's in the loop. I know you did that earlier, but not everybody was on the call, so.
Sure.
All right, commissioners, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam President. Nick, I was wondering, I'm sure this plan, first of all, it looks like a great plan. You guys are doing great during this disaster, as I have said before. This plan specifically will be given for credentialing, I'm assuming. And I would ask the question, is this the first time that we've sought credentialing?
So yes, we are seeking national accreditation of the county's emergency management program next month. It starts, this month starts November 30th. And yes, it is the first time. When I got here 5 years ago, working with Assistant Director McEwen, part of our strategic plan was actually to already get national accreditation by this month, but 2020. We will go through our accreditation visit the first 3 weeks of December. It's all virtual. And then we hope to be accredited by the commission that authorizes the accreditation by June of next year. And so this plan's actually required by the ORC. So my philosophy has been, so I believe in the national standards. They are built off of both lessons learned, best practice, the big brains in the industry. What should a community be able to do in a disaster, and how can they recover? So it does meet, I believe, the EMAP, it's called the Emergency Management Accreditation Program. It meets their standards, but more importantly, it meets what Hamilton County needs. And so while I have been working with my staff and the county staff to seek national accreditation, first and foremost, a program must meet the needs of its community. And that's why, so our program has sort of been twofold. We've been strengthening county government and everything we do, while also focusing staff on helping local communities be prepared as well. Because the national accreditation would do no good for us if, and again, we can't make local communities do anything, but we've definitely increased our outreach over the last 5 years and continue to work with us. So our goal is we build the program to match the needs of Hamilton County. We've incorporated the standards into our program development, but first and foremost, it meets our needs. And then we hope to be accredited in June of next year.
Okay, great. And not at this time, Nick, but maybe when you come on again, you can explain to me and the public what the benefits of accreditation is.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just good job, Nick. You know, I call where you work the back cave. and you guys just have the county covered. And I know I feel safe.
Well, I would be remiss to say, if I may, and then I know you guys have other business, that I'm only as strong as the staff that I work with. And Ryan, I always try to get him to smile. He's a little stressed out right now. He's my accreditation manager. But we've had a really dedicated staff. We've had a little turnover in the last couple of weeks. Like one staff member moved to New Zealand, and one took a job outside the industry but was promoted. So I'm very proud of that.
Wait a minute. Did you say somebody took a job in New Zealand?
Now his wife got a job. He just headed with her.
Oh,
New Zealand is really nice.
yeah.
And so, but you know, he was military. She had followed him around for many years, and now he was following her. And then, but I was lucky to be able to promote one staff member, and we just hired 2 more, which I'll introduce you to next month. So they've all done. Every one of us work hard, but it's a group effort, and I give credit to Ryan and the other staff for all the work they've done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Nick. Thank you for bringing us up to date. And we'll look forward to seeing you here in the near future. And thanks to Ryan. Ryan's on there too. Ryan, we couldn't see you because Nick had his PowerPoint up there, but thank you as well. I know it's a team effort over there, and we really appreciate all your work.
I appreciate that, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Our next item is the CARES Act update, and Holly Chrisman is joining to provide that update. We are nearing the end here, Holly, without an extension. So we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's good to see everyone. Yes, Commissioner Driehaus, you're right. The deadline for the CARES Act is currently December 30th of this year, unless we get an extension, which we are still hopeful for. But I'd like to start my presentation today to share some of the metrics of some of the programs that we have funded through our coronavirus relief funds. These numbers change daily, so please bear with me as some of them, of course, are just growing day by day. So this is what we had as of late last week. You know, as thanks to Nick and his team, we're doing a lot of work procuring PPE and getting those PPE, masks, gowns, gloves out the door. So you can see here the number of orders and the number of organizations assisted. We recently, as you may recall, launched a arts and cultural grant. We partnered with ArtsWave on that. They have been a great partner. And we are in final review of 64 applications, totaling $3.5 million, which is the amount that was allocated towards this program. So you'll be hearing soon of who we will be awarding those to. Really exciting stuff. And the rental assistance program, as you know, launched back in mid-July. It's had some changes over the past few months, good ones, including bringing on a couple additional partners, including St. Vincent de Paul to help us, as well as Job and Family Services, which we're so grateful for. And as of last week, we've helped 1,400 residents with their rent and or utilities. Small business relief. This was one of the first programs we launched, and the second round is coming to a close in terms of grants that are being allocated. And we'll be assisting in total more than 700 businesses, small businesses, which we're really excited about. And again, thankful to HCDC for their partnership on that program. Also, we allocated $5 million for nonprofit and domestic violence assistance. As you all probably recall, we have awarded 63 organizations to help with those increasing costs due to COVID-19. Again, great organizations that we funded and are grateful for their work that they're doing with their increased workload with the demands due to the public health emergency. Bridget, if you don't mind hitting the next slide. Oh, thanks. And then a few others, you know, some of these we've started very recently, such as the workforce development programs. You may recall a couple of months ago, because of our high unemployment rate, we initially did not have workforce development in our CARES plan, and that was added, I think, back in August. And so we've worked with, again, our partners at JFS, who have been just a delight and a godsend with our CARES Dollars program. And we have two programs. One is we are working with industry certified training programs for those residents that may have lost their job due to COVID or a reduction in income and weren't able to afford some of the training programs. We have allocated funding for that. And I believe as of just hot off the press, at least 21 residents have secured funding through this training program. And the second piece of the workforce development is a partnership we have with the Community Action Agency to do what's called a rapid reemployment program. And this is something that the Community Action Agency really developed as a result of our rental assistance program, because a lot of the people calling were asking, well, how do I get another job quickly? And so to the Community Action Agency's credit, they partnered with Easter Seals, the Urban League, and Cincinnati Works to develop this rapid reemployment program where they are providing training, coaching, resume services, identifying jobs, providing stipends to overcome barriers to employment. And that really just got started very recently. And they already have 72 residents enrolled in the program. So we're really proud of our partners and the work they're doing on this. It seems to be successful so far and really quickly out the gate. We also just briefly provided funding for expanding public Wi-Fi to allow for additional Wi-Fi outside of community buildings. So residents and students who needed additional access to Wi-Fi for remote learning could have that access. And we are getting ready to award in the contract phase for 5 organizations for that, including Cincinnati Recreation Commission, the Public Library, City of Wyoming, YMCA, and Cincinnati Parks. And just a few other programs to highlight that we early on recognized that there were childcare providers that had the pandemic childcare license back in March through May, which, as you can imagine, had additional costs associated with providing that service, but it was so essential that they were able to provide that service. So they had, as you can imagine, additional costs for cleaning, staffing, being able to separate kids into wider spaces. And so far, we're still working through the final batch, but we have our funding 43 childcare providers through that program. And of course, we can't forget the COVID-19 testing program in partnership with the Health Collaborative and all the health systems in our area, who I can't say enough about how well the community testing sites are going. You can see this was as of Friday, 13,000 tests. There's a test site pretty much available every day for residents to come and get a test at no cost. And I will say, just anecdotally, I was telling someone this, I was downtown on Sunday early afternoon, and we always have a site at the Justice Center on Sundays. And there were a line of cars on the Central Parkway waiting in line to get their test. So it's been an impressive program and one that I just am so grateful we were able to stand this program up, especially knowing what we're going through right now with the spike. And the last 2 programs I just want to highlight, the first one we kicked off back in late March, early April, was providing funding for hotels for residents experiencing homelessness. And this is, again, a little old data, but about 10,000 hotel nights. And we continue to provide funding for those hotel rooms. And lastly, a newer program in partnership with the United Way is for those residents who test positive for COVID-19 and may need resources such as food delivery, shelter, rental, medical supplies. United Way is organized where there's a one-stop where they will do very hand-holding with care coordination and making sure those residents who do test positive or are awaiting test results get the services they need in a very caring manner. So these are just a few of the programs. I didn't mean to take so much time talking about them, but really proud of how quickly these programs have come online and the partnerships and help we received from so many in the community to make this happen. So I'm going to pause for a minute before I move on to potentially new programs. If there's any questions on these programs before I move on.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks to you. And I know you've said it before to the myriad of people that have helped you do this. I know it's been a Herculean effort because of the volume, the amount of money and the volume of programming that we have rolled out here in a very, really short period of time. So thanks so much for what you're doing and responding to what we were hearing in the community related to these programs in order to make them hit the mark, and be as effective as they can be. So commissioners, any questions or comments before Holly moves on?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just shaking my head because as you were saying, how the county is trying to meet every need that we're aware of, and how Holly and her team has been working and Jack to make this happen. And I'm just shaking my head about what the county is trying to do. In addition, knowing the deadline of spending the monies, even though I'm just very strongly believing that we're going to get an extension, but regardless of that, we need to meet the goal that we were given. And Holly, I'm just thinking at this point, all hands on deck as it relates to, I'll speak for myself. If you need me to make phone calls or emails or figure out other agencies that can meet the needs, I'm more than willing to do that because we do not want to send any monies back. So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Holly, you have done an amazing job. This is the program that I talk about where the brain trust went into the think tank. And you guys just got it done, taking a comprehensive and common sense look at what the community needs were. And I know that it was a team effort. We all worked together, but you guys are the ones that did the work. So once again, I extend my gratefulness, my and appreciation for all of the good work that you got done while you were in that think tank.
Yeah, as Nick Crosley mentioned, you're only as strong as the team you're surrounded by. We've got an amazing team.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, there's no other questions. I'm going to move on to the real reason why I am here today, and that is to talk about the deadline. We've talked about this as the 12/30 deadline to spend the funds is approaching. Our team has taken a look at the unencumbered projections of unspent funds, and it's right around 10 to 12 million that's unencumbered, unobligated at this point. And we looked at those, we looked at the programs we're currently funding, and looked at, again, some of the needs that we've been hearing, and we are proposing a few changes to our CARES Act plan for your consideration. More may be coming down the road, but this is the initial tranche, if you will. And as you may recall, in our initial plan, we allocated funding for senior needs, which is primarily the Council on Aging, because we knew back in, May and June when we passed the first CARES Act plan, that there were significant additional costs related to senior needs. And we initially budgeted $2 million. We have had conversations with the Council on Aging and their needs, and their increased costs are coming in more than 2 million. So we are proposing an amendment to the CARES Act plan, not today, but this would potentially come before you on Thursday, to increase that amount by 1.03 million. And so it'd be roughly $3 million for senior needs. And the types of costs that we're talking about should probably be of no surprise, but really a lot of this are the meals, the additional meals, the additional delivery of meals. They are also providing personal care boxes to seniors, telehealth, telemedicine in terms of iPads, so seniors don't have to leave, and they can also, have their doctor's appointments without leaving their home, given their the high risk category they are in, and also some health kits. So those are just a few examples of the additional costs that we're hearing from Council on Aging in terms of the senior needs. The second is we have allocated $2 million initially for the Mental Health and Recovery Board. And again, similar to Council on Aging, they have more costs than we initially accounted for earlier this year. Again, we initially budgeted $2 million. They have said their costs are coming in an additional $650,000. And again, from the Mental Health and Recovery Board, these are roughly 36 nonprofit providers that they are working with, and over roughly 80 sites. And so some of those costs, again, telehealth, personal protective equipment, a lot of cleaning and facility infection control barriers, the types of things that we're doing in county buildings. And then the third item is a brand new program. And this is a population that we have not helped yet, and that's schools. We have thought about this over the past handful of days, and schools, you can imagine, are having some tremendous costs with remote learning, with providing access to students, cleaning costs, broadband needs. And we are proposing to provide a grant to schools located in Hamilton County, K through 12. And the amount allocated to each would be based on a dollars per student. And they would, though, it'd be a strict reimbursement, and they would have to provide proof of those costs to us in order to reimburse them for those. You've probably seen headlines of, for example, how much Cincinnati Public Schools has spent on additional costs, or other schools throughout the county. And we feel this is a population that we have not provided any assistance to at this time.
So Holly, excuse me if I may. So this grant will go to individual schools and not school systems.
We, in order to expedite the application process, because we are, close to that deadline, we are asking for school districts to apply. But if your school is not part of a school district, you can still apply. So there may be, of course, I'm completely.
Well, like a charter school or.
Right, that may not be part of a school district, yeah. But as opposed to having, just to use as example, all Oak Hills individual schools apply for this, it's more efficient to have, in this example, Oak Hill Schools District apply on behalf of all of their schools.
I see.
That just allows for a faster review on our part.
Sure.
Is there a limit to the amount?
Yes, right now we have a rough estimate of if this potentially providing up to $7 million. So that would equate to roughly $50 a student.
But so if a school district were to apply, then that formula would be imposed upon that school district, so that would be the limit?
Yes, as long as they have backup documentation to prove COVID-19 related expenses in that amount of money.
So $50 per child.
That would be the formula we base the funding on. And if you're open to this, we would bring forward to you, we have a draft application that's being reviewed right now, and we could provide that to you as early as tomorrow to look through the specifics. But really it's do you have expenses that were necessary because of COVID-19? And that would be personal protective equipment, digital remote learning tools, laptops, Chromebooks, barriers, extra cleaning required for a safe school. And if you have those, you just submit that documentation with a very brief application. You agree to the terms, and once it's reviewed, we would, and accepted, if it meets the criteria, we would provide the funding to the school before the end of the year.
So Holly, the district would decide if they want the grant. And then at that point, individually though, each school can say, instead of spending 50% on cleaning, we want to spend it on equipment or a laptop or laptops or something. They'll make the individual decision, each school will, but the district will make the decision on whether or not they need the money and how much.
That would be up to the district to decide if they, I mean, it's going to be the school district to say, this is how much, these are the expenses we've had that we've incurred since March 1st due to COVID-19. And that school district has, let's say 1,000 students. The max amount of funding they would be eligible for is 1,000 students times, in this example, $50 per student.
Yeah. I would just like to make sure that the principals of each school have some sort of input. So with the district, and hopefully that will happen. And I know that's not something we can coordinate. Right. The important thing is to get the money out, but just to maybe emphasize that they be sure to include the principal as relates to what their priorities are also. So.
Holly, do you have any idea? Let's use Oak Hills again, because it's a huge school district. If we were to multiply out, I don't know if you know this, the number of students in a district of that size, multiply that out, $50 per student. I'm just wondering what potentially they could ask for, right? Because that seems to me to be a pretty high number. So, and I know they'd have to have, be able to verify what they're spending the money on. It has to be covered. Really, I get all that, but I just wonder what that number is.
So if they have, I don't know what their enrollment is, but let's say it's 10,000. I mean, that would be approximately, they would be eligible for $500,000 in reimbursements, again, for COVID-related expenses.
Mm-hmm. But,
if they don't have it, they wouldn't be able to receive that cap.
Right. And I know they've also gotten some money from the state. And so this would be in addition to anything that was covered by the state.
Correct. It can't be used for the same costs that were covered by other CRF funding.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, I applaud this effort. I think we were struggling early on months ago to try to figure out how to help kids. We've had this conversation a couple times, and the virtual piece that we did, the expansion of broadband was part of that, and some of the youth programming. So I applaud this because we've been struggling to try to figure out a way to do something like this. So here's hoping that like these huge school districts don't gobble up all the money. That's my only worry, because I suspect they all have expenses that have yet to be covered. Yeah.
Right. Back and forth, virtual and going to school every other day, and many kids have, it's probably the government that provided the technical resources for them, but yeah, I would imagine that this is a lot, and for those families that struggle with the Wi-Fi, but so I hope they have that figured out. That's great. I can imagine. That's awesome.
Okay. All right, Holly. So we will hear from you in the future about any action we need to take related to these changes.
Right. And there's one more.
Sorry. Okay.
It's
you have more.
Sorry.
Ever a dull moment with coronavirus relief funds.
Holly, I'm sorry if I could just add real quick. I think just for the commissioner's information, I think the total number, the $7 million number that was discussed, and again, we're still deliberating that to some degree, but it was discussed as the budget office had done some research into the total student population in Hamilton County and applying that $50 amount. So it is a number that we, at least at this point, have some initial data to back that should fit and avoid the issue of any schools being crunched out of an allocation or anything like that.
Okay.
But we're still doing a little bit of work there.
Good.
We should have known that, Jeff.
Yeah, Lisa Webb's been on this one, so we're in good hands.
Very good.
That was Cindy Fazio. And the last thing I wanted to make sure you were aware of is in our current plan, CARES Act plan, we have funding for public health infrastructure. And this was for any needs for the health systems related to COVID-19. And we have spent some of that funding through our Hamilton County Public Health, but just a bit. And what we'd like to do is issue a grant through this pot of funding for healthcare providers for any equipment or infrastructure needs related to two types of projects. One would be for those equipment and infrastructure needs for what we now are learning are COVID-19 long-term patients, because there are additional requirements and care for patients that have longer-term impacts due to COVID-19. And the second type of project we're proposing to accept applications on are just any equipment or infrastructure that healthcare providers need due to the current spike that we're seeing in hospitalizations. This will provide them an opportunity if funding is needed. We have it available right now. So we are drafting that application now, but wanted you to be aware that will be coming. It's already in our CARES plan, but wanted you to be aware that this program may be launched here in the next handful of days. And it's in the amount of $2 million.
Okay. Questions?
Well, as you say, infrastructure needs, for example, Holly, can you give me a couple examples?
Yeah, it could be, well, I'm going to stumble through medical terms that I probably shouldn't, but it could be if there's certain medical equipment that is needed to help care for, whether it's longer term COVID-19 patients, given the multitude and multidisciplinary approach that some COVID patients need, whether it's neurological or mental health or other medical terms I'm going to stumble through. So it could be equipment. I don't know what that specific needs are. But then also when it comes to the spike in hospitalizations, is there equipment that a hospital needs to manage that spike?
Oh, actually a hospital, okay. Can they also qualify like a special bed that they would need at their home for this person, that a lift bed or something like that? Can it be individual like that or just in a hospital setting?
It's primarily focused right now on the healthcare setting.
Okay. Thank you.
And then, so I just want to wrap up just with next steps. So what you will see come before you as early as Thursday is an amendment to the CARES plan based on what we've talked about. So if you have questions or feedback, I would love to hear it over the next, day or so. And then secondly, for the school program, we will be bringing forth, if it's approved in our CARES plan amendment, we'll be bringing forth a resolution approving the application and agreement, because the agreement will be part of the application. That will be coming forward for approval on Thursday as well. And then I just want to close with, we do anticipate additional funding is going to be coming available as depending on how certain programs are performing and we start closing programs out. So we will be back in touch pretty frequently on recommended uses for any of those remaining balances.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Holly. Thanks for all the work.
Thanks.
All right. Our next item is related to the Port Authority. It's the Port Affordable Housing Bond issuance for Springdale, Ohio. I know we've got Todd Castellini on the line. I believe we have Andy Kuchka, the Economic Development Director for Springdale, also on the line. Am I correct?
That is correct, Denise. Thank you.
Very good. All right, welcome. Welcome to our meeting. We have the document related to this. It's a resolution approving of the bond issuance, but please walk us through this.
Sorry,
Jeff,
here I am.
I'm sorry, Jeff, did you want to
No, nothing. I'll just turn it over to Todd. Todd, I'm not sure if you've got, if you have Andy with you, if you have anyone else from the port or bond council with you, just want to make sure you get a chance to introduce your team. And just real quick to tee it up, this relates to an affordable housing project in the city of Springdale that the port is looking to serve as a financing conduit on. So, Todd, I don't know if there's other members of your team that you want to introduce real quick here.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. So in addition to myself, Andy, as you said, Andy from City of Springdale is on the line, as well as bond counsel, Ice Miller, Tyler, and possibly somebody from TWG. I can't see all the names on the Zoom site here, but I'm happy to explain what the project is and the port's role in the project. So the community called Willows at Springdale is a 383 unit affordable housing complex that was originally financed with low-income housing tax credits. It has basically come to its useful end and desperately needs to be redeveloped. And the developer TWG, a well-known developer out of Indianapolis who's done a lot of projects like this, has taken on the project and has applied for new low-income housing tax credits to recapitalize the building, which will include the renovations of every single unit and make it a much nicer community. The city of Springdale supports the project, and we're, as an organization, always happy to help our community with much needed affordable housing. So our role in this is to merely issue the bonds necessary to finance the project, and when we do that, we have to have a TEFRA hearing, which we've had, and TEFRA hearings need to be approved by one of our creating entities, which could be the city of Cincinnati or Hamilton County. Because this is outside of the city of Cincinnati, it would make sense to have the county sign off on the TEFRA hearing. So that is basically what we're trying to accomplish, and happy to answer any questions for you.
Okay, thank you. So Andy, I'm going to turn it over to you. Andy is, again, the Economic Development Director for Springdale. We always ask, related to projects like these, whether or not the community and the elected officials in that community support the project. And you are on mute. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The answer to the...
Oops.
Did I mute again?
There you are. Don't touch it. Yeah, there we go.
I'm simply called in on a phone, so I can't, there's nothing for me to click to change anything. The City Council at its October 7th meeting did unanimously approve a motion authorizing the mayor to execute the certificate of public approval for this bond financing, which is our official blessing, if you will, for the project. That has been signed. The city is very enthusiastic about this project moving forward. This apartment complex has become a blight by the very definition that HUD would use in terms of disinvestment, increased crime, and poverty in the community, and it sorely needs the reinvestment to improve the living conditions of the residents there. Also, with the new management, we understand that they're going to make a big effort to increase the management of the facility. So we had issues with businesses operating out of apartments, multiple families, 10, 15 plus people living in an apartment designed for one family, and they're going to do an improved job over the prior ownership of making sure the facility is safe and it's operated properly and it's used as a residence. So we're very excited about it and are happy to see it move forward.
Okay, great. Great, thank you very much. So commissioners, as we try to make sure we've got adequate affordable housing throughout the county, this one seems like a no-brainer to me, because this is exactly what we've been hoping for. Also, I just want to emphasize, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, that there is no liability here for the county. This is simply something that we need to do as the elected official leaders in the county to make sure that this moves forward.
That is correct. There is no liability to the county or the Port Authority.
Okay, thank you.
We're just merely acting as the issuer of the bonds.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam President. Andy, you had mentioned there's new management. Do you have the name of the new management for that project?
Yes, it's the new owners, TWG, are going to actively manage the facility.
Okay, and Todd, you had mentioned about the hearing, but you said you gave a name, some sort of hearing, just for my information. You said what did you name the hearing?
Sure. So anytime we issue tax exempt debt, we're required to have what's called a TEFRA hearing.
TEFRA.
And it's a public hearing.
Okay.
And like 99 times out of 100, nobody shows up. But we're required to do that, and we do it, and we document it. And that TEFRA hearing just needs to be signed off and approved by the creating entity for the Port Authority. In this case, it would be Hamilton County.
Okay,
and that's the reason for this request today.
Right, and when I hear a new term, I just want to be able to communicate that name. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So what will happen to the residents during the construction, during the renovation?
Yes, I'll take that, no problem. There is a plan in place. They've done this before. And so they will have to stage them because every single unit needs to be renovated. So there will be a system where they will have to move people in and out. It's very structured, but they're making every effort to make this as low impact on the residents as possible. But at the end, they're going to have a brand new facility that's much safer and nicer. But obviously they will have to stage them in a very orderly manner. So they'll have to move into a unit temporarily while their unit gets renovated and then move back. That's the only way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Madam President, if I could quickly, Todd, I think you said you had bond counsel on as well.
Yes, Tyler, are you there, sir? He was. Is there a question maybe I could answer?
Yeah, so I just didn't want your bond counsel to feel left out, Todd, but I'll just go ahead and pose it to you. So just in terms of the mechanics of this is a private activity bond or a conduit bond. Issue. I just see a thing. It says Tyler and I are on, but on mute as attendees. So Bridget, I don't know if there's a way to, if you can pull people over. Okay, it looks like I just saw some folks pulled over. So,
hello.
Okay,
that's Tyler.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Tyler and Todd, I know you could have answered the question, but again, just since we had bond counsel available, the question is just on the mechanics of this as a private activity bond and a conduit bond issuance. Who is the technical issuer here? I know that just as a matter of practice that this will not, again, as Todd indicated earlier, that this does not impact the board, the county from a direct financial perspective, nor do I believe it impacts our 10 mil debt limitation. But can you just give us a little bit more insight as to who ultimately is the issuer on it, and just any more information about the mechanics of the issuance in this case?
Sure. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, again, Tyler Kalachnik with Ice Miller. We're bond counsel. The actual issuer of the bond is the Port Authority of Cincinnati. As Todd has said, it's a conduit issuance, so the port is not liable. The purchaser of the bond, there's only one purchaser here through a Freddie Mac program. Merchants Bank of Indiana will be the initial construction lender, and at completion of renovation, the loan will be delivered and sold to Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac's committing to a fixed rate over 17 years. So that's kind of the details of the financing. Again, going back to what Todd said, there's no taxes, general funds available here for the bond purchaser. The sole repayment is revenues of the project.
Got it. Nor does it count for the board and public that may be watching, nor does it count against the county is statutorily limited in terms of the amount of bonds, general obligation bonds that we can issue and have outstanding, and this does not count against that limitation. So I just wanted to make sure that folks.
Right. Correct.
I had a question. Since TWG is the owner, who's the builder?
TWG also has a construction arm.
So you build it, you own it, and you manage it? Is that what you're saying?
They do, yeah.
Okay.
I don't. That would be too much work for me.
Not you, but the TWG. That seems like it would be a lot of work for them also. So we'll be getting more information though, and I know it's not an obligation for the county in any way as it relates to monies, but I'll read the information that was given, and if I have any other questions, I'll give those to you. This is for us, Madam President, on Thursday.
We've got a resolution in front of us today. Is there a timing element here, gentlemen?
Yeah, commissioners, this is something that the port had asked for consideration today, which is why we have a resolution before you today. And certainly if there's any other questions, that's why we wanted to make sure we had the folks, Todd, bond counsel, and folks from Springdale here who can answer any questions today.
Okay.
Yeah, again, this is Tyler from Ice Miller. So although it's a pretty ministerial function, the approval of the public hearing, TEFRA, or for your benefit, the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, is what put this public hearing requirement into place, allows for us to, we can't give an opinion on these bonds without this approval. So immediately after this is over, the rate will be locked, assuming everything is positive. The rate would be locked with Freddie Mac once we know we have this piece.
Well, Madam President, certainly we have affordable housing as our priority, so certainly will not impede on that progress because it's definitely needed out there and in other places. So,
I'd like to know if your construction company has a minority hiring policy.
I can answer that. And I was going to say earlier, as one of the benefits to having the Port Authority for both the city and the county, we get involved in a lot of projects. And when we get involved in something, the developer must follow our economic development policy, and we track it. So we get involved early in that process. And so whether they do or don't, they have to follow ours, and we're very diligent about that process. And one other thing I was just going to add is a benefit to having the port. We can issue these sort of projects. We're very nimble. We do it a lot, and it doesn't have to go through the county or the city or other municipalities. We handle these, and it takes a burden off a lot of municipalities. But yes, absolutely, there will be economic inclusion policy followed.
What's the percentage?
So we have for MBE, it's 30, for WBE, it's 25, and for WBE is 7, and for small business is 30. 30, 25, and 7. I always get this confused. I'm sorry.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm happy to provide that policy if you don't have a copy.
Mhm.
I'd like that.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would also.
Yeah, why don't you provide it and to Jeff, and he'll distribute it out to all three of us.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I do want to note that we have had this in front of us because Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was attached to your report, was it not?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so we've had this item just in order to give us some opportunity to read through the material and get ready for the meeting. So, all right. Any other questions or comments, commissioners?
I have no questions.
No, thank you so much.
All right. In that case, I'm going to move that we approve the resolution approving of the port's tax exempt bond issuance to finance the acquisition and renovation of an affordable housing project in Springdale, Ohio.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. We'll look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you
Todd.
very much. Take care.
Thank you.
So that concludes our regular agenda outside of our executive session. So if there's nothing further, I'm going to move that we go into executive session. Are we ready?
Second.
All right. I'm going to move that we go into executive session pursuant to RC Section 121.22G3 to conduct a conference with an attorney concerning MSD.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?